to say hello to them. So as you'll just have gathered, we are going to be recording this meeting, so you'll be getting a notification. So if you're happy to be recorded, just click on that. So a very warm welcome to everybody on behalf of CIPD Manchester, and a welcome to our annual meeting. My name is Rachel Burnham and I'm chair of the branch committee. And like all the other branches across the country for CIPD Manchester, our range of activities and programmes is organised by a team of volunteers. So we have a committee made up of a number of volunteers, most of whom are here tonight. And I thought it would be really nice if I invite them to make sure they've got their cameras on, and I'm going to invite them to give everybody a wave. So if you're a member of the committee, can you wave now? So indicating we're very pleased to see you all here. It's lovely. We've got 64 people in the session. We also, as well, have a team of additional volunteers, ambassadors, who do support our events and our activities, help us with outreach, write articles for the newsletter, also share their experience and expertise. So I'm going to invite all the ambassadors. Would you like to put your cameras on and give everybody a wave? We're really pleased. We've got a number of very new ambassadors who are joining us tonight, and it's lovely to have you with us. So thank you very much for that. We're going to be doing, we've got up on the screen the agenda for today. And let me say actually how nice it is to be welcoming both familiar faces to today's session, but also lots of people who I haven't met before, and it'll be lovely to have the chance to hear from you. So we've just been having some networking groups. We thought it was good to give that opportunity. We are going to, in a moment, move into a session overcoming imposter syndrome, and this is going to be an opportunity to explore this topic. That session will run for 45 minutes, and whilst we're in that session, I'm going to invite you to have your audios on mute, and you may find that it's easier to put your cameras, turn your cameras off, except we'll move into a breakout room during the session, and I do invite you to put your camera on during that session. And then at 7 o'clock, we're going to move into the formal part of tonight's event, which is our annual meeting. And you are very warmly welcome and encouraged to stay for that. So I hope that lots of you will stay for that. And during that annual meeting, we will be looking at the work that CIPD Manchester has been doing over the past year. We will also be looking at the makeup of the committee for the coming year. So do stay for that. So without any sort of further ado, what I want to do is to welcome and introduce our two facilitators. Now, during this session, we're going to be, this session on overcoming imposter syndrome, we're going to be using a tool called Mentimeter. So we're going to invite you to download Mentimeter. It's really helpful to do this on a smartphone if you've got one to hand, or you can do it on your main computer or laptop. So you can, if you have the QR code, which is there, if you can scan that with your smartphone, you'll be able to download that. And a little bit later on, we'll also give you the address. It's been put by Emma into the chat area, the address for Mentimeter. So you might find it helpful just to download that and have that to hand. Now, let me introduce our facilitators. So I'm delighted to be welcoming Kath Thomas to share with us in facilitating this session. And Kath is an expert in supporting people in leadership and team development. She's also very involved in coaching athletes, and I know she's going to bring some of that into the session. And along with her, we have our very own Liz Needham. And Liz is one of the people who are part of the CIPD Manchester Committee. Liz is our OD lead. And Liz is an expert in transformational change and in leadership capability. So I'm going to hand over to Liz and Kath, and they're going to share their screen.
Perfect. Well, thank you for that introduction, Rachel. I don't get introduced as an expert very often, so so yeah, that was interesting to notice. So I am just going to share the Mentimeter presentation. Rachel has just gone through the information about how you can log in, and you've got the information there in the chat as well. And we will put the code up shortly as well in case anyone's having any challenges with that. So welcome everyone to this session looking at imposter syndrome or imposter phenomenon or imposterism. It's a number of terms are used for it. But one thing is for sure is that it is being talked about more and more. And I'm certainly getting quite a few clients who are coming to me telling me that they've got imposter syndrome and they want to talk about it. So we'd really encourage you just to take this 45 minutes this evening, just to really focus on getting involved in the exercises. We've asked you to bring a challenge, so we want this to be time that's valuable for you, that you'll take something away from. We don't want you to just listen to us talking. So as Rachel said at the beginning, think about a challenge that you've got. It could be personal or professional. Get those pens and paper ready and log into Mentimeter so that you can get fully engaged with the exercises. You'll see in Mentimeter that there's an option to click on and add questions. We'll have a look at those as we go through. If we don't get the chance to answer all of them, we will follow up after and post something onto the website. So I should start with introductions. As Rachel said, I'm a member of the CIPD branch and I've been working with the CIPD for a number of years now. But in my business life, as it were, my background is in leadership development at all levels in organisations. I've spent a lot of time both designing and delivering transformational change in a global organisation. And I've also done a lot of business unit, departmental design and looking at how you can really improve performance. And at the moment, I kind of blend those things together in my business, which is great. I get the chance to bring all that experience to bear. And I'm quite often working with people when they need to gain a bit more clarity, or perhaps they're a bit stuck, or they're wanting to lead people through a period of transformation. And when I think about imposter syndrome, it makes me think about setting up my business. So I've gone from working in one organisation for over 20 years, where I had a very established network, I had an established reputation, and I had lots of help and support around me, to setting up my business and building my own client base. And I now work in quite a range of organisations, from small volunteer organisations to big global manufacturing organisations. And it can feel a little bit daunting when you're going into a new context and you might question yourself and think, can I really add value? Can I really be of use in this context? But I guess my learning is that leadership issues and challenges around organisational development, tend to be quite common. There are definitely some patterns there. And then certainly thinking about how you come together to find solutions to those challenges in a context, there's definitely some commonality there. So that's been a bit of a learning curve for me. So Kath, I'll hand over to you so that you can introduce yourself.
Thanks, Liz. So yes, my name's Kath Thomas and I have a company, Clearwater Consultancy Services, and I'll bring in a link to that in a moment if I might. But similarly to Liz, my background is in transformational change. I've done a lot of program and project management, bringing teams together. But in my business life now, where I feel privileged to have my own business, I spend a lot of time working with individuals, with teams, with organisations, where I specialise in resilience, building self-belief for people, creating motivation and positive mindset to work with people to move them towards goals that are quite stretching, and sometimes helping people to stretch themselves that little bit further than they thought was possible. And the twist, as Rachel mentioned, is that I am also a sports coach. So specifically, I spend quite a lot of time with triathletes who I did think were utterly bonkers, and now I am a triathlete, so I can confirm, yes, utterly bonkers. And that therefore gives me an opportunity to spend time with them, particularly around the open water swimming element of triathlon, which can freak quite a lot of people out. There's a lot of confidence issues with it, and Liz is nodding because I did manage to persuade her to get in open water as well. I can be quite persuasive when I want to be. And I just think that finding that motivation to stretch yourself that little bit more working with a coach can be really beneficial. And that's what I bring to the party, if you like, in terms of developing people. And that open water is the link to Clearwater, of course. Well, thanks, Liz.
Okay, so Kath and I are both Strengthscope master practitioners, and I know we've got at least one other Strengthscope practitioner in the session tonight. We may have others, and that's just one strengths-based tool. So you could actually do a bit of research around strengths-based development. It's something that really helps in this area. But we're really coming to this evening from our role as coaches, consultants, and also from being leaders in organisations. So we're not psychologists, but what we're bringing is lots of examples and lots of experience of the things that we found have really helped people to overcome either imposter syndrome or some of the feelings that are related to that, so that you can take a bit more control over your performance in any situation. As Kath said, from being an athlete to maybe going into your first board position or stepping into a promotion. So let's get some activity going then. Let's get everybody thinking. We're going to start with asking you to think of the 3 words that best describe imposter syndrome for you. So imposter syndrome, imposter phenomenon, what is it that best describes this for you? And as you start to enter your information into Mentimeter, we will start to see the image here on screen so that we can see where there is commonality. So make sure that you push enter after you've put your words in, and we'll start to see some words appearing on screen. There we go. So you can see things that are moving as people are entering. We've got quite a few people talking about fraud, anxiety, self-doubt and not being good enough, feeling a little bit out of place. Okay, so we will leave that open. People can continue to put their words in, but you can see there some of the things that people are really closely associating. So before we move on, I want to just introduce you to one of the Strengthscope tools that we use. And that's something that we use when people are facing challenge or you're going into that stretch zone. And it's 2 paths. One path is the path of possibility. And that path basically opens up our thinking. We recognise that there is a learning experience and that there are challenges, but we actually feel quite resourceful. We're actually quite curious about what we could do and how we could step into that opportunity. The second path is the path of limitation, and that's where we focus on things that we've not got, and we start to kind of become quite internal, and it closes down our energy and it closes down our thinking. So I just want you to look at that word cloud for a moment and to think, does that start to put you on the path of possibility? Or does that make you think of the path of limitation? And we'll come back to this as we carry on through the presentation. So I'm going to move into some definitions now, and I've taken these from the Cambridge Online Dictionary. Those of you who are from a similar generation as me will recognise the brilliant Robin Williams there and his role as Mrs. Doubtfire, and that's a really good example of somebody being an imposter. So we can see here it's someone who pretends to be someone else in order to deceive others. So there's a positive intention to deceive, to hide a truth, or to put something false forward as being a truth. Syndrome is really closely related to medical language, and we use it a lot through diagnosis. We use it to describe disease, but we also use it to describe a type of negative behaviour or mental state that's typical of a person or a situation. So that typical nature means that it's reoccurring. It's not a one-off thing that happens. It's something that is a pattern and happens more than once. So the term, and originally it was imposter phenomenon, actually came into our language in 1978 through some research that two doctors did, Dr. Pauline Clance and Dr. Susan Imes. And they looked at some research with high-performing women who had all achieved some really great things, and they'd had external validation of what they'd achieved. So they had qualifications, they'd won awards. But what was missing for them was that internal acknowledgement of their achievements. So they didn't feel their achievements, even though other people were recognising them. And they described it as a persistent, internalised fear of being exposed as a fraud. And we saw that word used in the word cloud. Fraud came up quite commonly. So imposter syndrome is a psychological pattern of how we doubt our skills, our talents, and our accomplishments. So if it's a psychological pattern, let's have a look about what happens in the thinking cycle and what informs that. So I'm going to talk through this next slide by using an example, because I think there's quite a lot of information here. And I'm going to start in this bottom middle part, looking at life's experiences, conditioning, and environment. And I want to start by saying that this comes with no judgment. We've all had very different experiences, and everyone's conditioning and their life so far is absolutely unique. And that's made up by our family, our backgrounds, but also by things that we see, that we hear, that we read and think about, and that we're interested in. And that develops our beliefs, our values, and the thinking that we bring. And for me, up until my early 40s, a big part of my story was I'm not creative. If anyone would have asked me, I'd have said, oh, if you need creativity, ask somebody else. And that was my mindset. I didn't really get involved in any creative things in school, or if I did, I didn't really engage with them as well as I could. And I didn't have anyone in my family that really enjoyed doing creative things, so I didn't really see it going on around me. And so my internal thinking habits were around not being creative, and actually quite a narrow definition of what creative was. My feelings weren't positive about creativity, and my actions were that I didn't kind of put any skills into practice or any behaviours. So that was my reality. And then when I started up my own business, I actually became curious about all sorts of things, developing my networks, what was going on in Manchester. And as part of that, I started taking photographs and got some good feedback about them. I then met Rachel Burnham, who you've just heard speaking this evening, and she introduced me to sketchnoting and to drawing. And I slowly got into painting. And I now enjoy painting, and I've kind of shared pictures that I've done with other people, and I would never have done that at one point. And I just want to share with you that recently a friend asked me to paint a picture for her goddaughter, who's named Lily. And she wants me to paint this picture for her so that she can actually take it out to Malaysia. And apart from being overwhelmed at being asked and having to do lots of practice, I just use that example of how our reality, so this set of goggles that we see the world through, can change depending on the thinking that we bring to a situation and how this cycle gets reinforced. So that's just one example there that's, you know, quite helpful to think through. You'll all have examples as well. So there's lots of science behind this that we're not going to go into this evening, but you could research growth mindset. There's great research now on brain plasticity and how, doesn't matter how ingrained these routines are, we can actually change things until quite late in our lives. There's some great literature on habits and how habits are formed. So I just encourage you to maybe delve a little bit deeper into some of these areas if it's something that interests you, to understand that thinking cycle a little bit more. So I'm going to move on now and share this next slide. And we all know that the rainbow has started to represent diversity more, but also value in terms of what our key workers have done for us for the last period. And I really like this image because the heart in the middle for me talks about human. And I've put in the bubbles some of the things that we think about when we think about imposter syndrome or imposter phenomenon. And things like low confidence, things like fear of failure. But for me, the context is really important. So if I'm stepping into something for the first time, or if I'm in a very new situation, it's absolutely natural for me to be questioning some of my confidence, or, you know, wondering what I need to do in order to reduce that chance of failure. You know, ambitious there, that's a really good one. If I'm actually putting myself out there and I'm stepping into a higher level role, of course I'm going to have some things to learn and some areas to grow in. So I just want to take you back again to the path of possibility and to the path of limitation, and to just think about the use of some of the words we've got here and the use of the imposter syndrome label, and be asking yourself again, is this putting me on the path of possibility, or is it putting me on the path of limitation? So I'm going to hand over to Kath now, who's going to talk a bit more about performance.
Yeah, thanks, Liz. I think there's some really interesting things coming up in chat as well that people are sharing around, you know, kind of what does imposter syndrome mean to them, and how do they interpret that in terms of that internal belief of perhaps I'm not good enough and that's what I see, but actually what other people see is very different to that, and they do see the competence. And what I wanted to do today is I wanted to talk about performance and performance factors, and to share a model with you to kind of think about performance and the things that feed into that. I've tried to simplify it down into 3 things here in actual fact. And what I'm talking about when I talk about these 3 different things feeding into performance is that it doesn't matter what role we are taking or what environment we find ourselves in. In actual fact, these things will contribute to a performance, whether that be you as a leader, as a manager, as a friend, as a partner, as an athlete. And that combination of those 3 things is what I find helps us to perform to the best of our ability. So in terms of moving things to a better achievement, if we can combine all of these things rather than just focusing on one or other of them, then that is what gets you that high performance and that achievement. So first of all, if we think about skills, what I mean by this is, do we have the knowledge? Do we have the skill to do something? Have we learned about it? As my husband would say, have I earned the certificate? Because he reckons that I like a good certificate, and we'll maybe come back to that. And then, do I have the motivation to do it? So Liz has talked about that path of possibility. So is my mind set to the point where I'm persuading myself to do something as opposed to persuading myself not to do something? And then bringing you back to the certificate, Claire's just put up a little chat that I've seen that says, love a good certificate, me too. Coming back to the idea of, right, okay, that's all well and good in theory, and there's the certificate, but if you don't practice that and put it out there, you'll never know how far you can push yourself. And it's that putting it into practice combined with having the skills and the motivation to do it and the right mindset that will help you on that path. And that practice takes effort. You've actually got to go out there and put yourself out there. And I think for me, that's where sometimes fear of failure can come in. And certainly my journey into triathlon, my personal journey into triathlon, I put it off for years and years and years thinking I'll never be good enough at that. real fear of failure, and yet I've gone to be more successful in triathlon than I did in other sport that I thought that I would be better at. So it's interesting how you can put your own barriers in place that prevents you from doing something that actually in the end you can be really good at and you can thoroughly enjoy. So what I want you to think about in the context of the challenge that you were asked to bring is, where do you need to place your energy right now? So if I think about these three different things, what I like to think about is, okay, on a score of 1 to 10, do I have the skills? On a score of 1 to 10, what's my mindset like? And on a score of 1 to 10, am I practicing what I need to practice? And if I'm scoring a lower score, then that's where I would want to put my energy. If I'm scoring a higher score, it might be less important. So I'll give you another sports type example, which is a personal one that I've got basically 3 weeks before I do. And it's a swim challenge, and it's a fairly big one. And I know that I can swim. I've got the right mindset for it because I want to do it. But actually, because of lockdown, I've had very limited chance to practice. But now that we've got access to swimming pools and open water, etc., I'm going to focus on that practice. So I don't need to worry too much about the skills and the motivation. I need to keep those things going in the background, but I need to find time to practice. So what I want you to think about is, with those three things in mind, what would you score yourself? And those scores will become important when you go into the breakout session, because I'm going to give you an opportunity to just think about where you might place your energy in relation to that challenge. Before we do that though, I just want to talk a little bit about comfort zone, which I'm sure is something that all of you will have heard of and no doubt have found yourselves in at given points in time. So this image sets out this zone of comfort, the zone of stretch and peak performance, and the panic zone or danger of burnout, depending how you look at it. And in terms of recognising that growth and development journey, putting yourself into the zone of comfort kind of restricts you and keeps you safe almost. But actually, where we get more learning and growth is in that zone of stretch. So we need to put ourselves that little bit out there. And that's something that we can do through pushing at our boundaries just that little bit. So if we were describing it as an elastic band, we'd be stretching that elastic band, but we wouldn't be completely snapping it. And one of the young ladies that I've worked with, Josie Kane, she's an age group triathlete. She actually said, no great stories were written in your comfort zone. And I reflected on that and see whether you agree with that. I do. I think that's probably the case. So what I would like to do is, I'd like to do an exercise with you where you take your scores and your thoughts about positive stretch into the current challenge that you've got. And you take the opportunity to work in your groups. I think there'll be 5 of you in the group, to share some reflections on what you've heard, some of the things that you've seen that have come up in chat, what Liz has shared with you, and really think about, right, okay, what would be useful to gain some more forward momentum for that challenge. There's some questions on screen here that might help you. The session itself is going to be for about 10 minutes, so it's not an enormous amount of time. And with 5 of you, you might find that you don't get to cover all challenges, but I would hope that you manage to take some insights and some learning from that. So when you get prompted, if you could click to join your room, and you'll get poofed off into a breakout room for that little while, and then 10 minutes will pass and you'll be asked to join the main room again, and then we'll just pick up some of your insights. So in the next
Oh, apologies for that, we're recording again. So when we think about strengths in Strengthscope, we define them as underlying qualities that energise us, that we're great at, or we have the potential to be great at. And I love the fact that we're thinking about energy and strengths. So some of you will have read about the concept of being in flow, and it's that point where we just lose time because we're totally engaged in what we're doing and we're really in our performance zone. And that's a very, very similar concept. So I love this image for strengths, or we might call them superpowers, because again, they come in all shapes and sizes. They don't have to be all polished and perfect. This isn't about being, you know, setting ourselves up as an ideal superhero, but it is about noticing that we all have strengths, and it means that we're unique. No one is ever going to be great at everything. And I actually find that quite empowering, because I think we do a lot to put more and more requirements on people. And actually strengths gives you permission to say, you know, I'm not great at that. I'm actually going to ask Kath to do some work on that, because I know that it's something that she'll really enjoy and she'll bring a lot of energy to. So I want you to go back to the challenge that you scored yourself on and that you've just had some time thinking about. And I want you to take your piece of paper and a big marker if you've got one, and to write in big letters one strength that you've got or superpower that is going to help you working towards that challenge. And if nothing comes to mind, use the questions on the slide to help to identify a strength. So when you feel energized, what would other people say about you? And maybe thinking of things that you're really proud of. So just take a moment to write that on a piece of paper, big letters, so that other people can read it, and just put that to one side, and we shall come back to that shortly. So Kath, we've already acknowledged that you're great at moving people to action. I'm going to hand over to you now to summarise and to take us into that action point. Are you there, Kath? Can you hear us? Oh, I'm wondering whether Kath is having trouble with her internet. I know that she did say that she was having a problem with it, so I'll just give her a moment, and if not, I'll carry on. Kath, can you hear?
Oh,
okay, I shall
Liz,
carry
I'm having
on.
some trouble with my internet.
Okay, I shall carry on, and I'm sure Kath will join us again when her internet wakes up. So to summarise then, we've looked at what imposter syndrome is. We've looked at how it impacts our thinking, our feelings, therefore what we do, and our performance. And we've looked at a number of tools that we can use to really support us to perform at our best, our personal best that's unique to us. Kath, I can see you back.
I am back. My apologies. My internet is clearly not as strong as my superpower. So can you hear me okay now, Liz?
Yeah. Yes, we can hear you. Oh, it looks like Kath has frozen again, so I'm gonna pick up and carry on. So, as I say, we've looked at some of the tools and techniques that you can use, and we've also had a look at that thinking cycle and what impact it might have on us when we use the imposter syndrome label. What might that do to our thinking and our feelings, and is that putting us on the right path that we want to be on? So we know that we're much more likely to move ahead if we commit to action. And when we go back to that performance model and we think about that opportunity for practice, let's get out of our heads and let's get something really clear down that's going to move us forward with our challenge. So I'm going to move us on, and I'm going to ask you the question, so what? We've spent 40 minutes or so thinking about imposter syndrome. You've all had the chance to think about your challenge and to discuss it and to hear some insights from other people. So I want to ask you, so what? What are you going to do as a result of your time in this session this evening that is going to help you to be on that right path and to move towards your challenge and achieving your goal? And again, if you can just input some information, we will see. There you go, we'll start to see some things appearing here. Lovely. Okay, so be kind to myself. Focus on one of those three areas. So that performance model there that people are going to use. List my strengths, love it. That's a really good thing to do. And then notice when you're using your strengths. Because when we're in challenge, we tend to focus on the things we've not got a bit more. Achievement log. Someone was talking earlier in one of the breakouts about keeping pebbles in a jar, about your achievements, etc. Commit to action, thinking about your mindset. A brag file. Oh, I love that. I've never heard of a brag file before. That's a great thing. Keep trying, don't give up. Yeah. Brilliant. So please keep entering your thoughts there. We will capture them and we will share them so that people can pick up tips and tricks that other people have got. So we're coming to the close of the session now. I want you to get your pieces of paper together with your strength and superpower on it. And I just want to leave you with that whole thought around the language that we use to describe ourselves and describe others, and the labels that we use. We must always really be mindful of what that does and how that shapes that thinking pattern and the actions that we eventually take. And, you know, as human beings, we can stop, we can reflect, and we can choose to do things differently. So take back that control. I'm going to stop sharing, and I want us to put ourselves on gallery mode. So if everyone can put themselves on gallery mode so that you can see, you might have a few pages. I've got 3 pages. What I want you to do, you might want to think of a power pose as well, but I want you to take your strength or your superpower, hold it up somewhere where we can see it really easily on the camera, and I want you to just scroll through and enjoy this unique, diverse group that we've got of people professionals and all the things that we bring in. So I can see determination, influence, creating engagement, learning, knowledge, collaborating. Okay, so if you can put your cameras on, if you can, and share your images, share your strengths, that would be brilliant. Oh, super positivity, I love it. Getting stuff done, that's always a good one. Oh, cheese jokes. Okay, that's good. We've got someone with cheese jokes. And we might take some pictures. So I hope people are okay. We've got one with resilience here, which is great. Anything else? Anything else that people want to share? Positive energy. Brilliant. Okay, well, I just want to thank everyone for engaging, to thank Kath as well, and CIPD for inviting us. And we just hope that that's leaving you feel a little bit more energised and a little bit more positive to face your challenge. Kath, you're back with us. Do you want to say goodbye?
I am, yes. So I just wanted to say, you know, thank you for having me, despite my internet letting me down a little bit in the middle of it. So thank you, Liz. And I'm loving, Samantha's just been holding her phone up going, go for it. I love that. So yeah, just to say thanks for all of your participation and the sharing. It's been great to see everybody. Thank you.
Brilliant. I'll hand back to you, Rachel.
A big thanks to Kath Thomas and also to Liz Needham for this session. Show our appreciation in the traditional way. We can either clap or you can click on the reactions button. Thank you so much. And it'd be great to share some feedback through the chat area as well. I think that's been really fantastic and a great way of getting us thinking about that, taking us through that whole process. So thank you very much to both of you for giving up your time this evening to share with us. A great appreciation to you both. Well, we're moving on now to our annual meeting, and I want to encourage you very warmly to stay with us for the next part of this meeting. It's open to everybody, and I'm really keen to encourage you to stay. We're going to be looking at the work of CIPD Manchester, and I encourage you to stay and participate in that. I appreciate that some people will need to leave, and that's absolutely fine. Let's take a look at the agenda for this meeting. So if we can move the slide on. So here is the agenda for this session, which is due to run till 7:30. I think looking at the time, that means we'll probably be trying to finish about 7:35. I'm going to move straight into taking a look at the minutes from the previous year's annual meeting. So make sure you've got those to hand. They were shared in advance of the meeting with the papers for this meeting. So I'm going to ask you to I'm going to pose the question, are we happy that those minutes are an accurate reflection of the last year's annual meeting? Can I see a proposer and a seconder for those minutes? So I'm seeing Rebecca Westaway as a proposer and Emma Brooks as a seconder. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that. Let's move on to the Chair's annual report. So if you can move on the slides, that would be great. I'm going to keep this quite brief because I want to involve some of the people in this part of the meeting. We all are aware of how very different this year has been to previous years and how very challenging the year has been due to COVID and then the knock-on impact of that in terms of lockdowns, restrictions, and also the economy. And that's had an impact on all of CIPD members, our organisations, for volunteers on the committee and for ambassadors, for each of us personally, and also for our families. I want to say how proud I am for all that we have achieved as a team of volunteers in working together, whether that's as committee members or as ambassadors, and all that we've done this year to support, challenge and inspire branch members. We've been working this year with a challenging new vision, which is setting out the aspirations that we have for the branch. We've lots of work still to do on that, but that's been stretching us and taking us in new directions. We've been reviewing things that we work on. But this year, of course, we've also had to take on the challenge of moving everything that we do online, whether that's been the meetings that we have to organise our campaigns and our events, or the events themselves. Over the course of the last year, we have run a huge number of online events. And I want to pay sort of thanks and appreciation to the committee and ambassadors, many of whom have had to learn how to run online events for the first time. So whilst some of us had been working online for a while, many people had to step up and really move, to pick up on Kath's term, move out of our comfort zones to work in this new way. We've also had to work in a very responsive way, but also to think what it is that we bring as a branch to these events. And I think we've really shone forth the sort of interactive, conversational style of events. Now, I'm not going to say much more, but what I want to do is to invite 4 of our committee members and ambassadors to share with us something of their highlights from the past year. So in turn, I'm going to invite Rebecca and Sam and Marta and Daniel, and I've invited them all to say 2 minutes worth of what their highlights are from the year. So I'm going to hand over to Rebecca to get us started with that.
Thank you very much, everybody. Well, I'd like to focus on our branch vision for my 2 minutes. So we started our branch vision last year based on feedback from our members, and we have decided on a whole list of actions, and we've funneled them down into actions that we could do this year. Of course, it's been very challenging for everybody. But one of the main things that we've been working on is working more effectively together as a branch. So we are still in the middle of a digital transformation. So we've moved over to MS Teams, as I'm sure many of you will be using already. So that's helping us to work better together, collaborate with London a lot more, cut down on the number of emails that we're sending backwards and forwards, so being quicker, more effective, and enabling us to bring you more in less time. Another thing that I'd like to focus on very quickly is just the collaboration that we've been doing at a regional level, and particularly with CIPD North, where we're going to be starting to develop a regional policy voice, because an established voice is something that's very important for us. So we'll be kicking off a launch event. I think that is on the 1st of July, about 5 o'clock. So those that are interested in policy, please do join us. So they are my highlights, how we're working better together and how we're developing our voice. And I'll perhaps just add a quick little point, if I can, that we've also been opening our doors to many volunteers who are not necessarily working in the profession right now, but they're studying to join that profession, and it's important for us to be able to give them that opportunity to grow their network and also boost their profile. So lovely to have some non-people profession people with us, helping them on their career journey. Thank you. And I'll now hand over to Sam.
Hello. So I would like to be able to share that because of the pandemic, we knew that a number of our HR peers have been in a new environment, a new situation where we have just been kind of stressed out, not feeling our best, and kind of overwhelmed. So because of that, and based on feedback, we started in March what we call the Manchester CIPD HR Cafe, which has been extremely successful. And it has been based for all HR petitioners, HROD and L&D. And it's the time just to de-stress, have some you time or me time, however you want to word it, and actually not focus on the day job, but focus on you. And it's meant that we've had some mindset, it is about mindset and growth, but we've had some mindfulness coaching. That was done by Deb Kelly. We have our very own Rachel Vernon, who did sketchnoting, which was amazing and very well received. I'm really excited that we actually have another session coming up from Shardine Blake, who is an actress and presenter and motivational speaker. And she'll be coming on June the 30th at 12:30 p.m. I've just shared it in the chat function, should you wish to join that. And she's going to give us so much to kind of fill ourselves up on. Now, these sessions are open, they're not recorded, they're there just for yourself. It's allowing us to actually share ideas as well and take things away. And the feedback we've been getting has been immense. I mean, it's been so positive, and I do hope to see a number of you joining that at the next session. And I want to mention as well, we have committed to doing another 2. If you feel that this is something we should do a little bit longer, please feed that back into us as well. But thank you. Hopefully I made it in my 2 minutes. Oh, and I'm going to pass it over to Marta, our ambassador.
Thank you very much. So I will share experience of being ambassador. In March 2020, just before the first lockdown, I joined CIPD Manchester branch as an ambassador. And personally, for me, that was career life-changing experience. As soon as I managed to support the first event face-to-face, the world gone mad. Everything, all the normal has changed 180 degrees, and we went for the lockdown. For me, moving for the work from home situation where being absolutely 100% social creator was absolute nightmare, but CIPD volunteering has helped me massively in this. So in last 1.5 years of being CIPD Manchester branch ambassador, I met fantastic people, I made friendships, and I developed myself as a person, as a professional. But also, believe me, I improved my IT skills massively. Being ambassador kept me also connected with people, feeling that team spirit, especially when you work on day-by-day basis on solo role. And also it kept my anxious brain very connected and happy, which was very useful. And my special interest got student groups. Being in the final stages of writing my dissertation, I found very, very useful events where we had workshops how to write dissertation. And I would highly recommend to every student to join the group and learn just new tips, connect with other people, share the knowledge, and just get the best practice. Also, from students' experience, I would say CIPD Manchester is not only focusing on your educational path, but also you can find amazing resources how to boost your career. As mentioned before, how to take this first step into the HR career, and this is priceless. This is just amazing help. So with my hand on heart, I highly recommend volunteering at the CIPD, and you will meet fantastic people and you will join amazing events. And when about amazing events, I will pass to Dan Taylor, who's got absolutely fantastic events. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for that. I will now give you an update on how we've been focusing on L&D over the past year. First, I want to say a massive thank you to Emma Clayton and Jane Danson for supporting me throughout these sessions. A bit of a snapshot of what we've done. We had L&D's response to COVID, how we had to react and flex a number of our sessions, and we had a bit of an action learning set around that. We then also joined by CIPD head office, and we had a policy session focusing on the skills gap that exists across the country, but we took a look at here in terms of the city of Manchester, and we also had a look at apprenticeships and the new T levy as well. We had a fab session by Dr. Mark Beatty, who looked at how HR and L&D could be more creative and agile. There's a recording of that on YouTube. And Andrew Jacobs looked at developing the L&D support, but on a very tight budget. And very recently, we had Lightbulb Joe discussing going beyond Zoom and the world of online facilitation. So the next bit I wanted to touch on was Manchesterness. So I've asked a question in the chat, what does Manchester mean to you? But what we will be doing over the coming year is representing Manchester, and I mean Greater Manchester when we look at that more clearly, and that'd be through our visuals, our language, our use of data, so that we can highlight how the session or the content really connects back to the city. So for example, by highlighting the skills that are needed here in Manchester. So it would be great if you've got any other ideas. Emma, lovely industry evolution, busy, 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 worker bees, sunshine, maybe not today. The last thing I wanted to say is that the Manchester branch is the biggest in the network, and this provides us with an excellent platform to promote our members and this fantastic city. So thanks for those thoughts. Keep them coming in as we move on, and we'll make sure that we represent CIPD Manchester moving forward.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much to all my volunteer colleagues who've just spoken. Can we give them a round of applause? Please click on the reactions button or give them a round of applause. Thank you so much. I wanted to open up because so many people contribute to the work of CIPD Manchester. We actually do all sorts of other work that we haven't had chance to share with you. We've had some fabulous work going on about well-being, and of course this has been the year when we've really needed to concentrate on well-being, so we've had wonderful work going on there. We've had some amazing work led by Liz around leading in a pandemic, so looking at our response. So lots of different initiatives going forward across the branch, and of course we've had this experience of delivering them online, and we've had interesting feedback from members about actually different people have been able to participate because sometimes people can't get to face-to-face events, and we've also done some experimentation with the timing of events. So again, we're looking at how we can continue the good things from that into the coming year, whilst also hoping that depending on how the pandemic progresses, that we will be able to start and offer some face-to-face events. Well, we are moving on now to the thank yous. So if you can bring up the thank you slide. First off, I want to thank all our partner organisations and stakeholders. CIPD Manchester works with a number of organisations quite closely, and we've had close relationships with them. And I do want to express our thanks to them. We also have had a tremendous range of very experienced presenters, facilitators and contributors who've helped us to deliver an excellent range of events. We're very keen that our events aren't just delivered in a sort of formal style, but actually get you involved and provide opportunities for engagement and for us hearing your views. So again, as we go on through the rest of this session, do share your responses to the programme that we've had over the last year through the chat area, and keep on responding about what Manchester means to you, that question that Dan raised earlier. I do want to express on your behalf thanks to all the ambassadors and all the committee who've made this year such a great success. So I'm thinking here about all those people who are continuing on, and I want to thank them because of the skills, the expertise, the energy, and of course the time that they've put into their work. We do have, and we've got them listed on the slide, we do have a number of committee members who are standing down this time. So I want to mention Gary Hewins, Emma Smart, Stephen McDonoghue, Jennifer Hume and Denise Nolan. Some of them have been working with us for a number of years. Just for a moment, I'm going to single out Gary Hewins, because Gary has worked with us as for over many, many years, both as a member of the committee over the last few years, but over a much longer period, first as a member of staff with CIPD and working across the North region. And in that time, he worked with many branches, but I want to particularly thank him, of course, for all the work he's done for CIPD Manchester, and how he's supported us with ideas and advice, sharing his expertise. He's like me. He's been a chair of a branch and was also chair of Lancashire branch. So it's been great to have Gary's expertise on the committee. We're particularly delighted that actually he isn't leaving us. He's he's going to continue this long association, and he's taking up a role as an ambassador with us. So if I can express our thanks to all those committee members who are leaving, but in this case particularly to Gary, perhaps I can get you to again click on the reactions button or give you a round of applause to everybody. Just before we move on into the Treasurer's report, I also want to thank all those ambassadors who've stood down this year. Lots of people have all sorts of challenges this year in terms of work pressures, in terms of family commitments and so forth. And we've been delighted to have you with us, and we look forward to working with you in the future if that becomes a possibility again. So thank you very much to all the ambassadors who are stepping down. Let's move on, and I'm going to move on to the next slide, and I'm going to hand over to David Beach, who is CIPD Manchester's Treasurer, and I'm going to invite David to present the Treasurer's report.
Thanks, Rachel. I'll keep this brief. CIPD asks branches to submit a budget each year, and for the current business year, which ends at the end of June, we had a budget of just over £24,000. Around about 17,000 was for events. Around £7,000 were costs for running the branch, committee meetings, travel, branch administration. Because of lockdown, nearly all of our events were face-to-face, and you can see the dramatic impact that had on the budget. So our estimated expenditure for this year is £2,887.73. And if we could have the next slide, please. So you'll see this information repeated on this next slide, but what I wanted to let everybody know is we put in our business plan early in June, and we're very pleased to report that CIPD approved a budget of £19,000, £12,200 for events, £6,800 for related branch expenses. Now, that's less than last year. However, last year, the events budget included £6,000 for the annual law masterclass, which will be run online in the new business year. And also a lot of our events in the new business year will also be run online. So in actuality, we've got a much better budget this year than we had, than the budget we were given last year. And that's a credit to all of the hard work that was done by committee members in proposing business plans for their areas of responsibility, which Rachel as chair pulled together, and I did the budget numbers. So £19,000 for the upcoming year. That's it.
Thank you very much, David. I do just want to give people the chance, if anybody has a brief question, please open up your mic, and if there are any questions on the Treasurer's report. Does anybody have anything that they wish to raise? Doesn't look as though anybody has. Thank you very much, David, for that. And I want to thank David for all the work he does on the finances. I think there's a number of roles on the committee where there's a lot of background work that goes on. We often think about the upfront work that we do in terms of organising events, but there's a lot of work behind the scenes on things like social media, our newsletter, and so forth. And a number of committee members are involved in that work. And I do want to express our thanks for all that work that goes on behind the scenes. Let me move on now, and we're going to take a look at the proposed committee membership for this new year. And CIPD has an annual cycle, which is a little bit strange. So it's always worth explaining this. The new year for CIPD starts on the 1st of July. So we're about to start a new year for CIPD. It will run from the 1st of July 2021 right up to the 30th of June 2022. So what you've got on your screen is the proposed full committee for this year. Now, I want to draw your attention to a couple of points. Firstly, that we've got 2 new roles that we're including in the membership. We'll have 15 people on the committee, and the 2 new roles that we're proposing are the role of HR lead. And this is in response to feedback that we had from members that we needed to give a bit more emphasis to supporting generalist HR people in larger organisations. And so we thought it would be helpful to have somebody to keep an eye on that area of work, and it would sort of balance out having an L&D lead and an OD lead. So that's a new role. And then the other new role that we've introduced is that of inclusion and diversity and modern slavery lead. Now, we have done work in the past in both of those areas, but we wanted to give a sort of increased emphasis to it. We know over the past year, particularly, how much inclusion and diversity has come to the fore, particularly with the Black Lives Movement. And so we wanted to make sure that we were giving much more attention to those areas in our work. So that's the full list. What I want to draw to your attention is that some of the people in those roles are in terms of office that were elected last year and so have another year to serve. Each of our roles is for 2 years. So if we move on to the next slide. This shows the roles and the people that we need to take a decision on today. So you can see on this list all the roles and the people we're proposing for those roles, where there is either a new appointment or a reappointment. So let me just talk you through those. For Vice Chair, we're proposing that Emma Brooks, I'm going to go through the new appointments first of all. We're proposing Emma Brooks, who is an existing member of the committee, our public policy lead. We're proposing that Emma take on the vice chair role alongside that. In another new appointment, we're proposing a student engagement lead, Marta Davenport-Wegner. And Marta spoke earlier and has been one of our ambassadors. I'm going on to the other new appointment, and that will be the social media lead. And Stephen Berry, who is another one of our ambassadors, who is taking on a role within the committee. We then have 2 other new appointments as membership engagement lead, Emma Clayton, and as HR lead, Emma O'Neill. And both of those roles, we're proposing that the individuals be co-opted. And let me just explain the reason for that is when we're putting forward nominations for election, we need to give 10 days notice and allow you to see details of the profiles. But we still had 2 vacancies last week that we were filling, and we were very pleased that we were able to fill them with Emma Clayton and Emma O'Neill. But because we haven't been able to share their profiles with you with 10 days notice, we're proposing that they be co-opted this year onto the committee. So that's why we've got them there. Now, all the other people, we've then got some people who are already on the committee but are taking on new roles. So our secretary, Adele Thorley, is taking on the role of employment law lead. And our vice chair, our other vice chair, Samantha Labanzu, is taking on the role of ID and modern slavery lead. All the other roles are people who've come to the end of a 2-year term of office and we would like to reappoint. So this is the full slate that we're proposing to you. And in a moment, we're going to invite you to vote on it. Now, let me just clarify. The vote will only be open to CIPD members. So if you're not a CIPD member, I'd like to invite you to hold back, and the vote will be just for CIPD members. And we will need a minimum of 15 voting to make it valid. So what we're going to do before we take the real vote on the election of the appointment of these new appointments and reappointments, we're going to do a practice vote. And this is just so that we get comfortable with using Zoom polling. So Rebecca, can I invite you to share the practice poll? And I'm going to invite all the CIPD members present to have a go at voting for your favourite flavour of ice cream. Choose your response and then press submit. If anybody's having difficulties voting, can I invite you to express your preference through the chat? I think if you're on a phone, this might make it a bit difficult for you to vote, but when we come to the real vote, we do want you to have a go. I'm seeing that we've had quite a number of votes cast. I'm going to give a few more seconds and then we'll close this poll. So just a few more seconds, get your vote cast. Is that working for everybody? I'm not seeing any hands raised. I'm seeing thumbs up. Okay, I think we've given that enough. So let's close that poll and share the results. And I think vanilla has won as our favourite vote, our favourite flavour of ice cream. So you've seen how that works. That gives you a bit of a flavour of how the poll will work. I'm going to invite you to close that. So you need to close it individually by clicking at the top of your screen. So just take a look at the list of people. We're now going to move to the formal vote on this. And I want to remind you, only CIPD members can vote. So, Rebecca, can I ask you to share the formal vote on this? Are you in favour of the proposed list of new appointments and reappointments to the CIPD Manchester Branch Committee for the period 1st of July 2021 to 30th of June 2022? Please cast your vote and submit. I can see that so far we've got about 20 votes cast. I know that there are some co-hosts and so forth who can't vote through the poll. So I'm going to ask you to express your vote through the chat. I'm going to give just a few more. We've got 33 people in the room. We've had 24 votes. I'm just going to give a few more seconds to allow people to express their views. Do make sure you cast your vote and then click on submit. You do feel free to abstain as well. I'm going to close the vote, so make sure you get your vote in. We're up to 28. So I'm going to, and here we have the results. So according to our votes, I'm delighted to say that 100% of people who voted in the poll, and let me just check the chat. I think we've got a couple of additional votes in the chat. I think they're all fours. So we've got a couple more fours in the chat.
Yeah, 3 in the chat, Rachel.
So 3 in the chat. So that means this list of appointees and new appointees and reappointees to the committee has been passed with 31 votes for and no votes against and no abstentions. Thank you so much for voting. I think we should welcome all our new committee members to the committee and all our reappointed committee members. Let's give them a big round of applause and a reaction. So, yay, let's do that. How fantastic. How fantastic. How fantastic. That's so wonderful to have that support from you for the new committee as they take on their new responsibilities, as we take on our new responsibilities. And I know there's going to be a lot of hard work ahead of us. We are at the sort of end of this meeting, and I do just want to say that we've got a lot of exciting developments coming up. I mean, there's all sorts of things, more HR cafes coming up. So you've heard a little bit about them. We're about to launch a HR book club. This is the brainchild of Emma Clayton, who is here, and we're terribly excited about that. I think that's going to be a wonderful experience. We'll continue to build upon the wonderful work that we've been doing with students and building links with all the centres in the Greater Manchester area, all those educational institutions that are offering CIPD qualifications. And we want to encourage more students to get involved in our work and also stay on in CIPD membership. We've got some great collaborations coming up with CIPD North, not only the public policy work, but also new developments for fellows. So if you're a fellow or you know a fellow, we look out for those developments. As I mentioned, we're going to have some much stronger in terms of offer for our HR generalists, and I'm so excited about the L&D and OD work that's coming up, and there'll be more. We're going to be doing a piece of work because we really want to stretch out and get more members fully involved in our work, and we'd like your help with that. So we want you to spread the word about what it is that we're doing in the CIPD Manchester event, and encourage colleagues and your contacts to get involved in that. And I think I better stop at this stage. You can see that we've got some future events coming up in the next few weeks, so keep a lookout for those. We want to thank you very much for attending and participating in tonight's event. Thank you. The feedback is fantastic that's coming in through the chat, and there is going to be also a survey that's going to be circulated to members, so do let us have your feedback. Thank you very much to everybody who's been involved in organising tonight's event, all the ambassadors, Adele and Rebecca particularly behind the scenes on this, and of course to Kath and to Liz for our superb session earlier on. Thank you very much, and I better say good night.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Good night. Lovely to see you all.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Just us left.
Shall we stop recording?